is the deliberate self-destruction of all institutions and activity that one needs to engage in for their forward progress. And it is done with the conscious or subconscious knowledge that it is being done on behalf of one's enemy or oppressor. So the oppressed person who participates in self-destruction is willingly doing it to the advantage of his oppressor, because self-destruction is based on the premise that if I could, I would have joined the enemy's camp.
Wow. Indeed. And that's something very. Do you think that there has roots in slavery, from our past in slavery, and some of the oppression that we experienced after slavery?
Oh, without doubt. I mean, slavery was the deliberate engineering of self-hatred into African people. And it was a 243-year in America, and even longer in other places, deliberate engineering of African people. And because of that, we have to recognize that the enslavement of African people was probably one of the greatest or most intense forms of psychological conditioning. I'm not aware of another population in world history who went through that degree of psychological trauma with that degree of intensity. Now, when we talk about slavery, people are quick to say that you guys were not the only slaves and you were not the first ones, which is true. Mm-hmm. We were not the only and we were not the first. However, our form of enslavement was unlike that of any other people, because it is the only one where the victim was dehumanized. And that's something that we tend not to deal with a lot. We were not considered to be human beings. We were animals. No other form of slavery ever in world history stripped the slave from his or her humanity, but American slavery did. So when we talk about the dehumanization process, which runs parallel to the self-hatred process, we got to recognize that the self-hatred black people have doesn't just stem from the fact that we're black. It also stems from the fact that we were taught that we're not even human.
Mm-hmm. Now, we always hear people talk about, slavery being in other places. Do you think that, I mean, me personally, I think that it's a part of excusing the white man for a lot of the things that he did and finding some reason to, forgive him so that we can, forget about the past?
The desire to forgive white people for the evils that they inflicted then and now isn't motivated out of any altruistic personality variable. It is motivated by one principle and one principle only, and that is loyalty to your oppressor. We only are so quick to be willing to forgive and forge alliances because we are loyal to him, more loyal to him than we are to our own selves. For example, take President Obama. Great majority of black folk are loyal to Obama, but Obama is loyal to the American social order. So how can you be more loyal to the system that is destroying your people than you are to your people? And it's because at the end of the day, most black people are not upset with white supremacy and how it treats black people. They are upset that they weren't one of the few blacks who were chosen by white supremacy to help carry out their functions. See, even when you look at the conscious community, those of us who are considered conscious, you got to realize now you have a lot of different motives for why people are participating in the conscious community. For example, some people are in the conscious community to make $1. Some people are in the conscious community because they want to use it as a stepping stone to political office. Some people are in the conscious community because they tried to get a seat at the round table of the black bourgeoisie and boule, but were rejected. And out of anger at being rejected, they decided to become a so-called revolutionary. You got black folk who either were once at the table of white supremacy or applied for a seat and was either put out or refused, and because of their anger, because they were rejected, they came to the conscious community. And these two groups are very dangerous. Why? Because if they are ever offered the opportunity to rejoin the bourgeois or rejoin the American social order, they would do it in a heartbeat. And that's why you can look at people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, who at one time were considered grassroots leaders, who never really were. They were simply in it to get rich. And as you can see, as soon as they got money, they faded into the black.
Wow. Yeah. Now, is that a personality flaw within many African people that we aren't angry?
It is a racial flaw. It is part of that conditioning. And I think we have the anger, but the anger is misdirected. See, depression, which I would say many of us suffer from a collective racial depression. When you look at the criteria for depression, black people as a group, although maybe not as individuals, but as a group, we meet the criteria for depression. Not taking responsibility for yourself, not having faith in your ability, lack of motivation to change your circumstances. Look at the criteria, the clinical criteria for depression, and collectively African people in America meet it. Now, depression can also be defined as internalized self-hatred or anger. The anger isn't directed at the enemy, it's directed at yourself. And so we are angry, but we're angry with the wrong folk. We're blaming ourselves for our condition as opposed to blaming ourselves for not solving it. And you got to distinguish between the two. You can't blame yourself for the condition because you didn't create it. And you hear a lot of black people say, well, we're our own worst enemy. No, we're not. Why? Because we don't spend billions of dollars to keep ourselves where we are. We don't spend any money on ourselves. But white supremacy spends billions on the prisons, billions on the miseducation industry, okay? Billions on the psychiatric medicine industry. They spend billions on police, billions on the CIA covert drug operation. So you can't say you're your number one problem, okay, because you didn't create your problems. Your problem is not trying to solve the problem. So we become complicit. We become complicit in our oppression by not doing anything about it. But we have to be clear. We didn't start these problems. Okay, the problem started when we were brought here. And for those of us who were already here, the problem started when we were oppressed. So we didn't start the problem. But by not doing anything about it, we become white supremacy's greatest accomplice to their crime.
Now, how does that thought of ourselves being our worst enemy play into becoming almost a pawn for the system of racism, white supremacy?
It's total. Because when you say you are the problem, dichotomous statement, you are the problem, I'm automatically absolving every major American institution that participates in and created my issues. I'm absolving them of any responsibility. When you say we are the problem, not white folk, when you say that, they love it because it lets them off the hook. It says the miseducation system isn't to blame. The mass unemployment system isn't to blame. The psychiatric drug cartel isn't to blame. The CIA drugs operation isn't to blame. COINTELPRO isn't to blame. The United States Congress isn't to blame. The fact that black people only own less than 0.5% of all the wealth in America, that's not to blame. It's them. And so when we say that it's us, we automatically support their argument because guess what? They're arguing the same thing. So the black person who says that black people are their problem, not white folk, are automatically supporting the enemy's position because his position is we didn't create these problems, you Negroes did, okay? And the reason you created this problem is because you don't know how to do any better because all of you are born genetically predisposed to screw your lives up. You're born defective. So you're not able to build your industries. You're not able to raise your children. You're not able to get along. And so when we say we are our own worst enemy, we become what? The first piece of evidence that white folk will use to justify their position because now they can say we're not the only ones who believe black people are in the condition they're in because of them. Black people believe that they're in the condition they're in because of them. So you don't have to listen to us. Just listen to their own folk, and they'll tell you that they agree with us. So anybody who says that becomes an accomplice to the crime.
And that's an excellent point, Doctor. But you know what I find so sad about that argument is that these very same people are not aware of the fact that it was our ancestors way back in our story that, you know, built all of these great structures that implemented and refined the music, the arts, the mathematics, astronomy, and all these different things that are being used today all over the globe.
The things that they marvel at.
That will sit up there and say or will agree, excuse me, with the argument that we're our own worst enemy will be the very ones that will buy into, that story. Well, no, y'all didn't do this. It wasn't y'all ancestors that did this. It was the aliens. It was anybody else but our ancestors that did it. I find that very, it's pathetic, actually, but continue.
Well, and you get black people to support that racist notion, too. That black people didn't build it. Aliens did.
Right.
From other planets. And you get black people. See, white folk always have black people who they could point to justify their arguments. Why? Because they train them. When you make a man in the image you want them to be in, and you control his thinking, then you automatically know that you'll be able to go to him to justify your position because his thoughts are yours. As a man is taught, so is his thoughts. But we also have to be conscious of the fact that political power is concentrated in the present. Political power is concentrated in the present, which means despite the great history that we've had, if we don't build power now, in the here and now, in the present, then ultimately what we did in the past is almost irrelevant because wars are fought in the present. Political power is acquired in the present. Economic power is a present reality, not just a past one. And so I think sometimes we get into a habit of trying to ignore our current powerlessness by looking for examples of our power in the past. And that's okay from an instructive position. But when we try to use the past to protect us in the present, it's never going to work. You see, because your past makes you great, but it's your activity in the present that maintains that greatness. And if your activity in the present isn't maintaining that greatness, the fact that you was great at some point in the history really doesn't mean anything to anybody. For anyone who watches sports, they know that once the New York Giants won the Super Bowl, that was cute. Y'all celebrated, but guess what? It's time for the next season. You'll be able to talk about that you won the Super Bowl. You'll be able to show the football and the trophy, and all that's good, but guess what? It's over now. Because it's all about the here and now. And unfortunately, black folk, because of our unwillingness to take responsibility for our present and our future, are always doing what? Escaping back into the past. So we have taken our culture and our history, and we made a religion out of it, where we simply use it as a form of escapism to escape from our present responsibilities, because we really don't want to face them.
May I ask a quick question? Because I know Brother Chills wants to, get some other things going. But just real quickly, so do you believe? Because the way I've tried to look at it is, it can be, some things in our past could be used as a way to help motivate. You know what I mean? Like, look, this is what we accomplished then. We can do even better now. You know what I mean? For our future. Would you agree with that, Doctor?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I think Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey both said, and I'm paraphrasing that, you must use the past to inspire. The Sankofa bird, the whole image of Sankofa, the symbol, it is a bird who's what? Walking forward, while looking back, taking that from the past that you can use constructively to create your present and your future. But remember, the bird is walking forward.
Yes.
He's not standing still studying the past. He's walking forward, reaching back to get those things that he needs on the journey forward. Our problem is that if you made a Sankofa bird to represent the cultural